Hello there, and welcome to Brainwaves, bringing you the best in board game and tabletop gaming news. I'm Jamie Adams.
And I'm Ian McAllister, and joining us this week is a man who's an interviewer extraordinaire, journalist, giant of the Scottish tabletop gaming scene, and hopefully he'll be able to help us out with the weird problems in the basement, for I believe he is a wizard. It's Richard from We're Not Wizards. Oh no, wait, you're not a wizard. Is that right? I don't know.
It's the season of October, so I mean, I'm quite happy to swing kind of both ways at the moment. As the time of recording, I do have my wand out, so there you go.
It is true, and it is an impressive wand, ladies and gentlemen, it has to be said. How are you doing, Richard?
I'm good, yeah. I have been playing quite a few board games, and I've been just generally interviewing everybody that I can before the world ends, basically. Which seems to be a fresh reason to interview as many people as possible, and just getting in the run-up for Christmas and not talking about Essen and avoiding anything to do with cons, because it seems like everybody else is having fun being in Germany
we're not
just
going,
now.
We're not.
And yeah.
One little thing just before we continue. This is going to go out after Essen.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
fine. Just saying, like, for the rest of the cast, we're talking about.
If we mention it, or even mention Essen, we'll have to mention it as in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of Essen chat the week this cast goes out, because this will be going out the week after Essen, so there'll be probably loads of wargaming news. We're in a sort of slightly fallow news period,
and we won't know anything of it because our scheduling is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. We scheduled this perfectly. We've got one cast beforehand and then one cast 2 weeks after Essen. By which time everyone will know everything.
And it's all fizzled down. This is like cutting edge news coming to you live and direct, as if you've gone on holiday for a fortnight, kind of thing. Yeah. So,
it's like as if you've taken a nice relaxing break on a nice island somewhere with no communication, didn't know anything about the board game world. You come back and our dulcet tones will help ease you back into everything that's going on.
I think that's the best way to do it. And if people know their worth, then this will be the only news podcast that they'll be listening to, and they'll definitely not be bothering tuning in to any social media channels at all.
I mean, why would you do that?
None.
I have no idea.
None. Anyway. These are the headlines for the week of the 28th of October, 2019. Gamecrafter games find themselves on Kickstarter without the creator's knowledge. Exploding kittens are money-grabbing little critters. And Iranian Game Designers denied visas for Essen. All this and more on this episode of Brainwaves.
Yes, we're starting with an actual piece of Kickstarter fraud this week.
Really?
I know in the past we have said that. I know. It's not often we talk about Kickstarter on this broadcast, but we are going to do that this week. But this is actual fraud as opposed to just sort of mistakes and campaigns collapsing. It was a company called White Helm Games put out a game called Dungeon Horde on Kickstarter, copying a game also called Dungeon Horde, also by a company called White Helm Games that is on the Gamecrafter. Now, the Gamecrafter, if you're not familiar with it, is a site where you can basically put together your own games in the States and send them out to people, but you don't have to hold a lot of stock. The Gamecrafter effectively assembles the games print on demand, effectively. The original creator of Dungeon Horde, Ernest Formoso, commented on the Kickstarter campaign that this had been stolen from him, and what then transpired was a very aggressive reaction from the person who had put up this fraudulent campaign, calling people all sorts of names, typing very weird sentences that make absolutely no sense, and just...
It was very Ali G.
It was incredible. Just, like, words that made no sense, or just missing some letters, and like threatening to kill people and send assassins after them, and it was just astonishing. Apparently, this person has also put up another Kickstarter campaign for a game called Christ is Born. This is also copied from a Gamecrafter game, and yeah, it got pulled down by Kickstarter pretty quickly, as did the Dungeon Horde one, thankfully. It's just another reminder to check what you're actually getting from Kickstarter, and it is slightly worrying that Kickstarter kind of let this stuff through. I know they can't check everything, but it seems a little odd, especially there's some weird tiering going on in the Dungeon Horde campaign, and the whole thing didn't look legitimate. It looked very odd and strange, which is why I think people started to look into it. Just an absolutely incredible thing.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that Kickstarter as a platform doesn't have ability to check for kind of almost like self kind of plagiarism. That I would reckon one of the checks it would actually do would be to see kind of the legitimate, whether the campaign's legitimate, whether there's kind of places on that could flag up and say, oh, this has been used before. Yeah. You know, I can see that on existing campaigns, people using templates and stuff like that. But it just strikes once again that Kickstarter seems to be a place which is quite happy to collect the money without having kind of any of the realms of responsibility for the behaviour that it kind of entices, or, you know, can see it's on its own platform, which is kind of surprising to me. Kind of really.
Yeah. It is a weird one. It does seem to be like a quick Google would have, you know, sorted this out before approving the Kickstarter. Hey, look, there's another game called Dungeon Horde. Oh, look, it's exactly identical. Oh, look, it's got exactly the same artwork.
We've seen this before on Steam when there was the Greenlight program, and there was just this for quite a while, this spate of copy-paste asset flips that flooded the market, and the quality control wasn't there, and it took the huge concerted effort from the community outcry for Steam to actually do something. And it might just be we as, you know, gamers who use Kickstarter just continue to make this outcry and hope that something will change.
I suppose if you're spending all your time union smashing instead, you tend to forget the small. Oh, I made it political. Oh, can we ring the bell?
Yeah, speaking of money.
Speaking of lots of money, actually, and little tiny furry animals that have brought a lot of joy and are basically all over the shelves. Basically, Exploding Kittens are just gathering money like a cat gathers little furry mice toys into his basket, because there's been an announcement that TCG Capital Management has invested $30 million into the Exploding Kittens Incorporated, which is the company behind the eponymous Exploding Kittens, as well as Bears vs. Babies and the recent Throw Burrito. The money itself is going to be used to grow the company, develop new games and new ideas to build their community, and to expand into live events, which seems to be a little bit of a cash cow, kind of generating your own kind of live event ticket prices and stuff like that. And I've no doubt that people, this is the interesting thing, is I think that Exploding Kittens' reach is quite big, that I could see families attending it, not just kind of gamers, in terms of, I can see it being quite a kind of like a mainstream event. Of course, the company Exploding Kittens Incorporated was founded by Matt Inman, who is author of the rather funny and interesting webcomic The Oatmeal, and Elan Lee, who's the former chief design officer at Xbox. TCG Capital Management are part of the Chernin Group LLC. They're an investment firm dedicated to building consumer businesses. And as we know, as we said, well, Exploding Kittens, they are actually hosting their own gaming convention, Burning Cat.
No cats will be burnt.
I hope that's a huge disclaimer on that, because I wouldn't, because it's just the smell. Yeah. It's right up there with Wet Dog. But they're basically, it's going to be in Portland, Oregon next year, which they're aiming to reinvent the fan convention to put more emphasis on actual gaming community and having fun. Which people say that to me, and the first thing I think about is, well, there's a few conventions over here that seem to be doing that, like Aircon, for instance. Seem to be doing quite a good job of.
Don't bring your advertising onto this show.
I'm not. I'm just saying.
You monster.
I'm just Tabletop Scotland as well. I felt they were both kind of events that were concentrating on the gaming. I'm just wondering, what are they talking about? Are we talking about kind of mainstreaming it, getting more kind of families involved, traditional kind of what they would say the non-gaming type people?
This is a slightly unusual, rather more serious story, which does have a little bit of a story to it. So if you come sit down by the audio fire, and I will tell you a story. Now, on the 26th of September of this year, two Iranian game publishers, Reality Game and Dorahami Games, they were unable to secure a German company to ship their games to Essen, which of course has just gone on this past weekend, if you're listening on the day of release. Their plan, therefore, would be to go to Essen and take copies of their games in their luggage and, hopefully sell as many as they can to people who might be interested. However, Sorab Mostajim, I hope I said that right, of Reality Game, tweeted on October the 8th, his visa had been denied to Germany on the grounds of, "We are not convinced of the goal of your trip." Despite Sorab attesting he had reserved a booth at Essen Spiel for €4,200 and was also hosting a panel at the convention called "What Do Iranians Like to Play and What Social Roles Does the Game Scene Play?" You'd think that's, hopefully, something that might qualify him to come through.
Yeah.
However, on October the 9th, just the next day...
You think that's evidence enough?
Yeah, you'd think so. A day after he posted that, he then tweeted again saying all Iranian exhibitors were denied visas to Germany, except one, but he's an American citizen, so that kind of doesn't count. Alongside that, Amir Salamati from Rumiz Games, another one of the companies that was going to exhibit at Essen, had to cancel a scheduled interview, citing, "I just want to inform that my visa for Germany has been rejected. Apparently, German embassy believes that I will leave my wife, my family, my house, and my business here and try to stay in Germany after Spiel."
Yeah, it's kind of borderline racism.
I think there may be, and again, this is all conjecture, but there may be some possibility that people are being leaned on diplomatically, and there's this idea of coming across and staying as possible intelligence agents, and we're coming across for a board game convention. That's a very good excuse, but that is all conjecture. That's not what's going on, I don't think. But to continue the story, the organising company of Essen, Friedhelm Merz Verlag, got in contact with the German embassy in Tehran after there was a large outcry on Board Game Geek, which some part of the story broke, and had a lot of people, including game designer Bruno Feduti, saying, email the embassy in Tehran, and also email the people who own Essen, see if something can be done about this. Alongside this, the Iranians who had had their visas denied had also sent an open letter to several European organisations, which we will link to in the show notes, a copy of it via Instagram. However, they did say it was unlikely this would be resolved for this year's Essen Spiel. With that being said, as of this day of recording, which is the 22nd of October, the news is that the past weekend at Essen, some publishers' games have been shipped, and some representatives from the publishers have been on site. Is it a good resolution? I'm not going to judge that. Is it potentially setting a worrying precedent, considering the slightly unstable and uncertain diplomatic and global times we're now living in? Possibly.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I mean, I think it's something that we are going to see more of as a problem, as when we see Expo next year, Games Expo 2020. They'll have been over Essen in the last weekend trying to get publishers to come over. And I think they're going to have a problem with that, because this kind of thing might happen in a post-Brexit Britain. But where are they going to be? Is a German publisher or a French publisher or whatever going to be able to get a visa easily to come over to a convention for a weekend? Is that a thing that's going to be difficult to do? In the past, no, it's been easy and everyone can move around, but it's not going to be the case. And this is an example of the kind of thing that can happen when that sort of freedom of movement is just not there.
But now, moving on to the rest of the news.
So we're back to Kickstarter again. I've got all the Kickstarter news this week, and this time it's yet another board game tablet is going to be hitting Kickstarter right now. This is the Game Board 1, a 16-inch by 16-inch tablet, which is designed for tabletop gaming. It's designed by Rob Wyatt, who is the system architect on the original Xbox. He's formed a company called The Last Game Board, which he is CTO and co-founded with CEO Shail Mehta. The Kickstarter campaign launch was just days after reports that Wyatt had left the Atari VCS retro console project, claiming that he hadn't been paid for his work for 6 months, which is not great. They want the Game Board 1 to eventually be able to interact with physical pieces like an RPG character, keeping stats and aiming for and aiming for buying individual games or a Netflix-alike system for games and pairing your mobile with the tablet as a controller. Sort of stuff we've seen from other projects like this in the past. It's $349 to back, which is not exactly cheap, considering a Switch is in the $300 range these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a wee look at the companies that are on board to make games for it, and the only actual board game company I could see was Cryptozoic, which are makers of the DC Rebirth and various other games as well. Yeah, I just don't know about these attempts to... I'm all for sort of digital integration into board games. I'm quite a fan of Chronicles of Crime, which I've been playing recently with my wife. That's really good, and I quite like some of the app integration stuff I've been seeing. But the stuff like Teberu that's coming from Simon and the previous attempts to do a board game tablet like this, it just seems kind of unnecessary. Everyone's kind of got tablets or phones or that kind of thing we can play board game adaptations on. And I just don't quite see the point of this, really. I mean, and also, I'd warn anyone off, like, tech Kickstarters are the most risky ones by a long shot, so do be very careful if you do back this. It
might be slightly flippant. It's called the Game Board 1. Written down here as the Game Board -1, not as I first looked at it and thought, the Game Board -1. Because I kind of went, why are they calling it that? And honestly, it took me longer than I'm happy to admit to go, oh, it's the Game Board 1. Okay.
Does that also calling it Game Board 1, does that imply there'll be iterative upgrades hardware-wise? And suddenly you won't be able to play your games?
I don't know.
I'll tell you why I'm not sold on it, because two reasons. I play board games to sometimes get away from technology. Mm-hmm. And secondly, as other failed experiments have happened when you get interaction with technology and analog, is that as soon as the tech company moves on and decides to finish doing whatever they're doing and no longer support the software, you're stuck with a game that just doesn't work. Whereas, you just there's nothing you can do. You might as well put it to one side. And it does happen. It continually happens with versions of consoles and stuff like that. We seem to get a new console every 4 or 5 years, where technically I can take a copy of any board game from the shelf that can be 15, 20 years old, and I can still get it to the table and I can play it. And yep. I've not seen anything that's made me go, I kind of need this in my life. I need to be staring at a screen while I'm staring at a board. Not convinced.
Yeah. No, me neither. I mean, if something like the Switch actually has a lot of board game apps on it already, and is a much better console because it's got the support of a gigantic computer games company behind it.
Exactly.
And you'd be much better off buying that. Jamie, what's happening over in Glasgow?
Many, many things, Ian. You know this. It's a very happening city. But a group of academics at Glasgow University has put their heads together, and they've come up with a way of making family law apparently engaging and enjoyable, and that is a board game called Legally Wed, which apparently sees players, according to the release, race around the board to be the first up the aisle, completing various steps along the way. No sniggering back there, you two. Completing various steps along the way, including the legal formalities required for a valid marriage. Which I'm always happy, as a fan of Genius Games, the company who puts STEM-focused subjects as board games, and who I own a copy of Cytosis, the cell biology board game, and at UK Games Expo this year, Ian and I played Periodic, one of their new games about the periodic table. Very much enjoy.
It was good.
I'm less wary than other people might be on edutainment games. Now, Felicity Beaton, who is one of the designers and one of the academics, has said, "We think this new board game is a great way to help raise public awareness of some of the complexity of the law around marriage." Another one of the designers, Dr. Frankie McCarthy, said, "We weren't trying to make a game initially, but we've always been interested in different ways of engaging our students in the area of family law." Now, I am no lawyer. Is family law hard to engage with? It makes it sound like it's a bit difficult. Anyway, the designers of Dr. Frankie McCarthy, Felicity Beaton, and Professor Jane Mayer, head of the Law School of Glasgow, collaborated with a graphics company and produced a prototype, which was released last month, and they're aiming for a commercial release sometime next year. Now, I am generally...
Okay, then.
Yeah, I am all for games trying to make subjects that are maybe a little bit out there, a little bit difficult, hard to engage with, easier to understand. As I've said previously, Cytosis is a game about cell biology. Now, I did a bit of higher biology and advanced higher biology, and I really enjoyed it. I kind of didn't understand it, and Cytosis has kind of helped me. I don't know about you, gentlemen.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds fairly basic from a game point of view, but I'm always interested when people use games to educate in an educational sort of setting. I know that Juniper Green board games that I go to, they recently helped out the Midlothian Science Festival with a sort of board game day, doing things like Cytosis, some of the Genius games, and things like photosynthesis, sort of science. The games with a sort of science inflection as well. Yeah, it's good to see that kind of stuff, and I think we'll see more of that as board games take more of a hold in a sort of wider social context. It's good. So, in the last week or so, there has been a bit of a Twitter storm, trash fire, however you want to call it, over a particular social media platform. This was a company called... what was the company called?
Feed Me Games.
Yeah. This company called Feed Me Games, who had made a new social platform that specifically for tabletop gaming, had done a bit of research and a bit of reach out, had launched the thing, and then basically posted a massive rant about why no one was coming to their site. That got us thinking a little bit about board game social media in general, and the communities that we interact with personally, be that Twitter, Reddit, BGG forums, any of the innumerable Facebook groups. The board game world is spread over a wide variety of social media platforms. So is it time that we do centralise the community in some way or form, like bring them together in one place? Does that already exist? Or is a variety of venues to discuss board games actually a strength of the community as opposed to a weakness? What do you think, gents?
I will say, if I can go first, that I think that the percentage of interactivity regarding board games, I think there's a vast majority of it doesn't happen online, to be honest. And I think that there's in terms of community, a lot of people will think about, they think about online community, but the offline community in board games is certainly an awful lot. To a lot of people is the reason that they go out on a Friday, or the reason they go out, once a week to kind of meet physically with people and to interact physically with people. And I think that, and people have certain parts of the community that they interact with because they want to, and certain parts of the community that they interact with because they have to in order to maintain a certain level of presence. So, for instance, I very much enjoy interacting, say, on several groups like, say, Sporadically Bored. I love going into that group because it's really good fun. I also like interacting on Twitter with people. However, in terms of like Board Game Geek and maybe our own Facebook group, we don't have a Facebook group for ourselves. And I feel that I'm putting stuff on Board Game Geek because I feel I have to in order to keep the presence of the brand up on Board Game Geek. Not because I don't rush off and say, oh, I've got to check this on Board Game Geek, which sounds really, really strange. But if we put like a review out there, I'll make sure that I put that on Board Game Geek. So it's there, not because I know that there's an audience kind of there. And it happens occasionally, but I think that there's a lot of people who surround themselves with the online community and think that's the be-all and end-all. And I see it kind of like, that's where they kind of express themselves, and which is fine, but I reckon that's the tip of the iceberg with regards to what the actual physical community is, and I'm more likely to see aspects of a proper community maybe when I visit a con, when I go to like Tabletop Scotland or something like that, when I'm meeting people face to face. These are people I'm meeting that are friends and stuff like that, I think. And and so did this guy that put this platform out there. There's several big mistakes that he made with it. That's fine. I mean, it's baby steps. I think, peeing in the bathwater and throwing a hissy fit, which was absolutely hilarious at the time, and I don't think everybody kind of joined in underneath and went, ha ha, kind of, you made a big mistake, which is fair enough, people do that, but also, we don't need it. I'm not sure we kind of need it. I'm not sure we need a dedicated platform, because I think that you can end up being surrounded just by it, and I think people would be interested, then they would just jump away, because they're more interested in other things and people than they are just talking about board games non-stop.
For all that Facebook has been in the public eye for various negative issues over the past couple of years, it is that accessibility that sadly is, one of the main draws for having so many different, for example, Facebook gaming groups going. I can look and see how my family are doing, how my friends are doing. Oh, I can also see, what people's thoughts are on this new game that's come out, or people have got things to trade. This is great. This is accessible. I'm able to get this all in one place.
Yeah, I think there can be leads to kind of like polarization of, depending on if you feel you're fitting in the right way with the community as well, because I've recently seen kind of cases of Facebook groups being open up which are saying we are not going to censor anybody and it's all about free speech, but it's actually people saying some fairly kind of using it as an excuse just to say some fairly nasty things. So it's not a case that they're saying, oh, I'm here to give my point of view. It's a case of, I'm here to say some kind of nasty things because I know if I say it in other certain places, people are going to say, hang on, why are you saying that, kind of thing. There's a certain level of responsibility. So just interested. Yeah, board game community is still kind of growing and changing, and we'll see what happens over the next couple of years with it. I think... again, I'll just reiterate, I just don't think the online community really wholeheartedly represents the hobby and the people that I know. A lot of people who I play games with on a regular basis who care nothing for Facebook or Twitter or even Board Game Geek in some ways as well, and still are, you would consider that they're still vibrant members of the community because they are getting down and probably doing what an awful lot of social media folk aren't doing, which is actually just playing games for the fun of it and not playing games because they're having to review them or comment about them or make sure they know stuff about them so they can talk about them, kind of thing, which is a strange irony.
Yeah, I was going to be like, oh yeah, I agree. You should play games just to have fun and not to talk about them on a podcast.
Oh no, wait. Hold on a second. Yeah, it's an interesting thing that like we were talking about earlier in the cast. Exploding Kittens, for instance, is one of those games that doesn't really care about Board Game Geek at all in any way or form, because its audience is completely different. Unlike yourself, Richard, that I post to some places because I have to. Like I have a Facebook page for the Giant Brain because it's free advertising, and why wouldn't I? We do have a group, but I really need to shut it down because I don't do anything with it at all. And Twitter is my main sort of source of interaction for social media, mostly because my primary interaction with the community is writing, and Twitter is for that. I don't use Instagram as much, but someone like Ross from More Games Please does, because his primary thing is taking photos of board games, and very good photos of board games. But yeah, I agree. I don't think we need a central reserve of social media for the hobby. I don't think you can really make that happen either. It's just too difficult to actually establish that and make it a thing. I mean, there's so many social media platforms, and the reason for that is everyone likes something different. That's the reason there's not just one. And
variety is the spice of life, and we each find our own things that speaks to us, and that's my 2 cents on that.
I think just the case of if you're actively trying to kind of engage across all social media, there's naturally some that you'll find an awful lot easier to do and that you'll enjoy and you'll end up interacting with kind of more. And there's some that that you'll, like the reason that we don't have a Facebook group is quite simply because I work during the day, and the thought of having to then go back at night and see what I have to kind of monitor, and there's no way you can run a group without just yourself. I don't think it's possible. I think you need to have a couple of people managing it, just in case you do get folk that are going on to be kind of troubling or edgy, or you have to kind of like almost like split people up until one of them is sit in the living room and the other one is sit on the stairs, kind of thing. Because I think it kind of happens in all kind of places, basically.
now, a word from our sponsors.
Will David escape from the car crash? We'll never know, but tune in tomorrow when we find out. But first, I know all you people out there, you're huge Hallmark fans. Well, I've just got to say to you that the American TV channel and card shop Hallmark has brought out its own version of Monopoly on October 25th. Isn't that just amazing, you good people? I know you want to pick up the phone, but this isn't for sale. Hallmark, we're famous for our feel-good, cheesy, romantic holiday films, including The Last Christmas Tree, Smoky Footprints on the Hearth, and Santa's Last Sad Puppy That Had to Take Its Last Final Trip to the Vet, and Everybody Cried. They're pretty cookie cutter, but nevertheless they got a huge following. We've got properties that are romantic film sets and locations such as Skating Pond or a Christmas Tree Farm, and you have houses and hotels that are cottages and inns. Cottages and inns, respectively. Unlike the Pasha Ibiza or Ibiza edition if you're in America from the last podcast, this version will have a special Hallmark-related playing pieces, such as a watering can, sit down, ice skates, ice cream, and prepare yourself, Granny McMurray, a Christmas tree. I know. Callers are waiting by to take your call, but you cannot get this. You have to go to the shop. It'll be available on Target.com. That's Hallmark, the Monopoly game, available October 25th. And now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
And before we go, just to skate away from the Monopoly car, there was an interview about a year ago. This story's just popped up again. It's an interesting story. It's worth a wee mention. There was an interview last year with the musician Graham Nash, formerly of The Hollies and Crosby, Stills and Nash, on Sirius XM, in which Graham Nash talked about playing Risk with the one, the only Mr. Jimi Hendrix. And I will quote Graham Nash here. "Jimi would play Risk on acid, and I never, and me personally, ever beat him at all. He was unbeatable at it. He was a military man, you know. He was a paratrooper, and I don't know whether you know that about Jimi, but no one ever beat him at Risk."
Brainwaves for all your dead musician board game news.
Dear. And next week we'll be talking about why Mark Bolan from T-Rex was excellent at Guess Who.
Spoilers, Richard, spoilers. Before we go, we'd just like to give a little shout out to our executive producers, the Lucky Sparrow Gaming Cafe, and especially this week because Kathleen and Robert from the Lucky Sparrow Gaming Cafe got married this last weekend. So congratulations, folks. Unfortunately, we couldn't visit the cafe while we were through in Glasgow because of their nuptials, which is just disgraceful. But we wish you all boo indeed. We wish you all the best for the future, and we hope to see you both soon.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys, and massive congratulations.
Richard, thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been an absolute delight as usual. Where can people find you on the interweb?
You can find me on the interweb nets. If you go to the Googles and you search for We're Not Wizards, you'll find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and you'll find us on our blog, which is we'renotwizards.blogspot.com, and our main site, which is we'renotwizards.com. You'll find us on all the podcast catchers of choice. That's all the podcasts catchers with the word pod and the word cast in them, and some that don't have the word pod or cast in them, such as, say, Spreaker. If you have enjoyed the show tonight, then I suggest you go to Apple Podcasts and you search for The Giant Brain and Brainwaves, and tell other people about it first of all, but also jump on just now to Apple Podcasts and give these 5 fabulous people a rating, a review, and definitely give them as many stars as they allow you to do. I believe it could be 6, it might be 4, but if you aim for the middle, which is 5, that would be absolutely fantastic.
Well, that's basically my job done. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. As like Richard says, do give us a review and rating on iTunes and share our stuff about, and do the same with Richard's podcast, where he interviews all sorts of fabulous guests, and you can find us on the usual places: Twitter at The Giant Brain, Instagram or Giant Brain UK, our Facebook is The Giant Brain, and you can find our website at giantbrain.co.uk, and do give us an email about anything on the show if you want to get involved at giantbrainuk@gmail.com. Thank you very much, Richard. That's a lovely wizard hat you're wearing, and good night.
No, good. Just let it be.
I don't have a comeback for that. Bazinga.